that.
Is it going to show? Usually it's a blue one. Oh,
There we go. I think we're good.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Monomoy Regional School District, Monomoy Regional School Committee meeting for Thursday, March 11th at 6:30 p.m. This meeting is being held partially remotely in accordance with the Governor of Massachusetts' March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, GLC 30A, Section 20. And we are going to call our meeting to order with a roll call attendance. We will start in the Zoom room. If you could say your name and present, starting with Joe.
Joseph Osceola, present.
Thank you. Sharon?
Sharon Stout, present.
Thank you. Joanne?
Joanne Sheehan, present.
Wonderful. Jackie?
Jackie Zebrat Long, present.
Thank you. Meredith?
Meredith Henderson, present.
Thank you. Nancy?
Nancy Scott, present.
Thank you. Terry?
Terry Russell, present.
And Tina Gaines, present. So we are in full quorum. First item of business is approval of minutes. And we have two sets of minutes to approve this evening. The first is from February 10th, which is our joint meeting minutes with the two boards. And if I could have a motion to approve, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Jackie. And Nancy has seconded. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, we will move to the Zoom room for an approval of the joint meeting minutes, starting with Joe.
That's an aye from Joe Osceola.
Thank you. Sharon?
Aye from Sharon.
Thank you. Joanne?
Aye from Joanne.
Wonderful. Jackie?
Aye.
Nancy, Meredith?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Terry?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so that's unanimous. And the second set of minutes is from our last meeting, February 25th. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
I think it was Jackie and Nancy seconding. Any discussion? All right, moving into the Zoom room to approve the February 25th meeting minutes. Joe?
Osceola, aye.
Thank you. Sharon?
Sharon Stout, aye.
Joanne?
Joanne Sheehan, aye.
Thank you. Jackie?
Aye.
Meredith?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Terry?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. So that is unanimous. Now we move into public comments. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Additional time at the discretion of the chairperson. Is anyone in our public would like to speak this evening? Okay. Oh, do I see anybody in the public who would like to speak? Just raise your hand. All right. Seeing none, we will move on to reports and discussions. And the first item is the Project Lead the Way grant presented by Mark Smith, Director of Curriculum.
Lead the way.
All right. Good evening. Mark Smith, Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment for the district. We just wanted to give you some information about Project Lead the Way and some exciting news to share with the school committee. But before I get started, I did want to sort of name something up front, which is that I had been getting a little jealous of the fact that Michael has been getting so much time in front of you. So I really felt like I needed to slide an opportunity in here for a presentation.
We've missed you.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I've really been thinking a lot about, how do I compete? Because I don't have the charming, witty accent. He suits up pretty nice, so I can't beat him there. Terry loves his graphs. And I definitely can't work the graphs like that. So I went with brevity tonight. So no more than 5 slides, get you in and out.
And the color. The color is
And
beautiful.
the graphics. I always love your graphics.
So why am I here? Thank you. I appreciate that. I feel the love. So I wanted to let you know, you may have seen we did put out a press release recently, but the district did receive a $45,000 grant from Project Lead the Way. And this is targeted towards bringing, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about what Project Lead the Way is in a second, but this will allow us to bring the Project Lead the Way engineering pathway to our high school students. It's a 3-year grant and a 3-year rollout program. And it includes, the funds can be used for materials, for hardware, including some materials to actually go in the space, and I'll have Mr. Souza's space in the engineering space, for membership to Project Lead the Way, as well as professional development, which we'll talk a little bit more about in just a second. It's okay. So a little bit about what Project Lead the Way is. So Project Lead the Way is an organization that's focused in the engineering sciences space. They've got 3 main pathways, which you can get through them. Course is in course materials and professional development. There's an engineering pathway, a computer sciences pathway, and a biomedical pathway. So the direction and what we applied for the grant was for the engineering pathway. But Project Lead the Way, largely I pulled this quote off of their website, and they are focused towards hands-on learning experiences for students that anchor real-world problems within the learning, and it's a rigorous set of coursework. It's Project Lead the Way is well recognized from colleges and universities as high-level engineering courses. So it's not AP, but it has the sort of same reputation among colleges and universities. And it was designed, or the reason we went this direction is we were looking to enhance the rigor of our engineering program. So how we got here, as you may recall from the strategic plan, strategic objective 4, one of our action steps actually specifically speaks to this plan. And you can see that the last phrase within the sentence says, and develop engineering pathways for graduation. So this is sort of addressing that subset of this particular action step. And so I'm going to I have Larry Souza's here in case we have any specific questions. He was supposed to be here tonight, but he wasn't able to make it due to COVID quarantining. So I'd be happy to, or he's on the line to answer any questions for us. But really, I want to give all the credit to Larry. We've had some conversations, myself and Jen Police, with him over the last, I would say a year or so, about really trying to bolster up the engineering program. I think he would tell you that he's been disappointed in some of the enrollment numbers, and we were really looking how to really add rigor to the program. And I think a big part for our students at our high school is they want to look at courses for the majority of our students that are going to help support them as they go on to higher learning. And the way we had our engineering courses constructed, it was hard to really sort of engage in, and for our especially our higher level students, to look at those courses and say, yes, that's going to help me get on to college. So this really helps in that way. So again, working with that problem, Larry worked and did a bunch of investigation and a bunch of research, which ultimately drew him towards Project Lead the Way. He took the lead in setting up meetings with Project Lead the Way to learn some more, and then bring that back to Jen and I to have some initial conversations. And then we made a joint decision to pursue the grant. He and I worked together on the grant. It was a 2-phase process. And then as we got deeper into the grant, after we got through phase 1 and started into phase 2, then we started to bring in the larger science, technology, and engineering department for some input and planning, which I'm going to talk a little bit about in the next steps, because while the 3 main courses Larry will be teaching, there's sort of a recruitment effort that involves the larger science, technology, and engineering department. So where are we going next? So as I mentioned, it's a 3-year process. So we bring in 3 courses. They build upon each other. First course is an introductory to engineering. Then there's the principles of engineering, and then there's a series of different course offerings that we can offer. Our current sort of thinking and direction is computer integrated manufacturing, or computer, but we've made it deliberate, and we put it as part of our grant application. We're actually going to survey students next year to really get a sense, because we want to make sure that we're supporting student interests. So there's a whole series of other types of, so like there's an environmental science, environmental engineering course. There's a whole bunch of different that are sort of the capstone classes, but that have different specialties. And we want to make sure that we offer something that our students are excited about or engaged about that meets what their wants and needs are. So the introductory courses we need to get in, and we're going to start with that next year. But we will be surveying students during the next school year to determine what the third year course the best is. So Larry will go to professional development this summer for that one course, and we'll roll out introductory for engineering next year, principles for engineering the year 2, and then, like I said, whatever that third one is in the third year. Oh, thanks. We have to do supply ordering. There's going to be some hardware updates to actual equipment, including some of the computers. And then we're going to get it, we actually already started with recruitment as far as the program of studies and getting information out to students. But in addition to that, sort of thinking long-term, we have a couple of courses in the high school program of studies currently that are either STEM related or engineering related or foundations of engineering related. And this is where the larger STE group got together, is we're going to meld all those together to make one elective course for 8th and 9th graders. And we've actually put in a grant application. We can do it without the grant, but we've put in a grant application for another curriculum they offer, which is called their Gateway curriculum, which is a 6th through 8th grade curriculum, which is more unit-based. And then we're going to use units from that curriculum to build this semester-based course that's designed to entice students, and it's very hands-on, project-based, just like the PLTW high school level courses, as a way to entice and pull students into the process. And that little picture there is my little punch list for Larry. And that's it. Questions?
Thank you very much, Mark. And looks like we have questions, Meredith, and then Terry.
Just a quick question. So you said that you're going to survey students to kind of determine what that specialty is for the third year. Are we able to do only one?
Yeah, just
Or could you
sort of
do-
capacity-wise within
Okay.
the high school schedule, like in order to make it so that we can offer something that has enough kids in it and we can have somebody to teach it. Yeah, we'll probably have to pick something that's for the, meets the majority of what students want and need. And plus, there's a training piece, so each course gets trained separately. It's an intensive. Larry, was it 80 hours? Is that what you told me? Give me a thumbs up.
Yeah, 80 hours.
Yeah, so an 80-hour training for each course, right? So just sort of logistically thinking about how to pull that off. There's one of the disadvantages of being a smaller high school is that we have to be selective in what we can and can't do. That doesn't, we did have some initial conversations with the department. If this is successful, do we think about the computer science project Lead the Way pathway? So we've got computer science classes already. But if this is really successful and the students really like the design of these courses, then do we revamp our computer science program in a way that's supported by Project Lead the Way? And our science department is a little heavy on the biology side, just the type of teachers we have. We have sort of their experience is biology heavy. So we've had some initial conversations too. Do we explore the biomedical pathway as an additional? So I don't know if we have the space to offer all three, but that's sort of in more of the long-range conversations that Jen, myself, and the science department have had.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Terry?
Thanks, Mark. This sounds good. Just probably show my age, just so I can catch up. This particular program that we're going to introduce, has this, I'll use a covert word, has this mutated from our old IA type of program years past?
Ooh, I don't know what the IA program is. So
Industrial arts?
yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So we're way beyond sort of the old shop class. Yes.
Okay, so no more cheese boards?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah. These are
I've got one at home.
the big draw for
Wait a
Project
cabinet.
Lead the Way is it's anchored in some type of real world engineering based problems. Kids
Right.
are working with complex problems. It's not like, yes, they will learn engineering skills, but it's more about applying engineering skills to solve problems.
Good. My last question, probably not, but A year or two ago, we removed Spanish from the elementary once-a-week rotation and replaced it with some sort of a science exposure. Would this fit into that? Or-
So they do have courses that go, they do have a curriculum that goes all the way down to elementary. That's not currently part of our plan. Our planning starts at the high school, so we're working at the, with these 3 high school level courses. Then we've applied for the middle school curriculum grant, which is right now our next, or our most immediate need is to address create an 8th, 9th grade elective as a recruitment tool for the high school level courses. However, as part of our grant application for the middle school, we placed in there that as part of that long-term plan, we then would like to start to work the units down into the middle school. We have technology and engineering as courses in the middle school schedule already, so this would be curriculum that would support those classes. And then if that's successful, I'll be honest, I haven't thought as far down to elementary, but there's space for that as well to go down to the elementary school. They do offer, I forget what it's called, but there's an elementary version of their curriculum as well.
Okay, good, thanks.
All right, wonderful. Any other questions? Sharon, go ahead.
Yes, I'm glad you're presenting this, Mark, because I think this is wonderful. Whose idea was this to apply for this grant?
That would be Mr. Souza.
Okay, great. I'm not up on engineering and what our programs are, but I heard you say rigorous, and I heard you say something comparable to AP. So is this going to be targeted to just the top group of kids, or would it be something that kids in general curriculum could do, or what is the limitation or the projected population that we're thinking about with this?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So it's a yes and. It has the rigor and the reputation that colleges look at it. It qualifies for, and I'll get into the weeds here a little bit, but the high school, part of the high school accountability ratings are for your 11th and 12th graders, the percentage of them you have in advanced level courses. This counts as advanced level courses in the science fields. So it's recognized by both the state and colleges as rigorous work. And it's hands-on based, inquiry based. It attracts a wide variety of learners. So it's really an opportunity to open up higher level work to a broad spectrum of students. And we've already determined there's going to be no prerequisites for the introductory to engineering course. So that really opens the door wide for everybody. We're planning to run 3 sections of it next year so that we can really open up the opportunities for lots of students.
I'm really thrilled to hear that, because I feel like we've done a lot for the AP since Monomoy started, but to have a broad spectrum, or to have things for just below AP is really something that's appealing to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Was that the completion of your comment?
Yes, thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Joe?
Thank you. Two short sets of questions from Mark. Under the page, what is next? There are some 6 things listed, some of which are potentially, some of which cost money. And are these potential costs covered by the grant? Are they going to be additional for the district? Or are they in the budget already, such as professional development, for example? Even supply ordering and hardware updates might have been placed in the budget. And second, can Monomoy Regional High School reapply for a grant in the future, or is this 3 and out?
All right,
Thanks.
so.
I'll mute this.
Yeah, so, and if I don't answer all your questions, Joe, just ask them again. So I'm going to do my best to answer all those questions all in the one answer. So the $45,000 covers almost everything here. Professional development, just the way that I worked the grant, I set aside the professional development costs out of the Title II grant. So again, not part of the general funded budget, but, so I guess it's sort of using two grants to make it happen. But, so that all those costs have been accounted for. And then long-term, to answer the second part of your question, there is an annual membership fee to PLTW, just like there is for the College Board, et cetera. That will be absorbed into the high school budget as we move forward, but it is covered in the grant in the first years. And there are some consumable costs, but Larry has consumable costs already in his class, so they're comparable to what we're already paying for consumables as part of the engineering program that we already offer. This really helps us get off the ground and get up to, because there are some, if we go down one of the pathways, that the third course, depending upon which course we end up with, one of the machines that we would need for that course, a CNC machine, is like $16,000. It's an expensive machine, but it's built into the budget of this grant. So it allows us to get all that off the ground. PLTW is really interested in getting you launched and not letting cost be an inhibitor. And then I think in there you asked, can we reapply? They do have expansion grants as well. So we are in as a launch grant, I think they call it. Then they have expansion grants. So if we down the road decide we want to try to launch we do want to launch the computer science pathway, then we can apply for an expansion grant that would allow us to get that off the ground.
Okay, thank you. Did that get all of your questions answered, Joe? All right, good. Anybody else? Larry, was your hand up just a second ago? I didn't know if you wanted to jump in. Okay. Anybody else?
Anybody?
Anybody? Anybody else?
Hey, I was trying to be in and out of here.
It looks good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you, Mark.
All right, the next is Mr. Michael McMillan, FY '22 budget.
You get the drum roll next time, Mark.
All right, good evening. Thank you very much. You know, I only have lots of appearances like in the winter and the spring. Then I'm very quiet. I'm like a flower that blooms in the spring, and then you won't see me again.
It's like a rare bird.
Yeah. Like a daffodil.
Oh, like a daffodil. That's
A
even
daffodil,
better.
yes.
All right, let me just get this.
Oh, I'm hearing, what is that? Ooh. Okay. We're testing our new sound system, everyone. We have a new sound system.
So I'm gonna just try and get our people back. Here we go.
Oh, there they are. That's funny.
All right. Okay, perfect. Let me just take us to our first slide. So we've reached the stage in the budget process where it's the job of the school committee to vote on the budget. And we have to present to you this evening a budget that's revised from the one you previously approved in recognition of the situation we're in. So I'm going to give you a bit of the background to that and our recommendation. So the idea is we take the vote now, and then under the people's heads on the screen, we will then submit the budget to the towns, so we can go forward to the town meetings in May and June. So, as you know, the current budget proposal, while it was a relatively small increase of under 1%, it did lead to a significant increase in the assessment for Harwich. And that is something that we are very mindful of. And I mean, the Chatham assessment is a reduction of over 3%, but it's an increase of over 3% for Harwich as it stands. So just a little bit of background as to why has the assessment gone up so much. In part it's because the pie that we're cutting everyone's slice from has got a little bit bigger. So yes, there's that small budget increase, but the revenue offset from state aid and general fund revenue went down by 166,000. So the net effect of those two things on assessments is to increase them by 574,000. And then Harwich's slice of the pie has got a little bigger for a couple of reasons. One is that the reduction in Chatham's minimum local contribution kind of has a knock-on effect of increasing the part of the pie that gets split between the two towns based on foundation enrolment. So, and as due to foundation enrolment, Harwich gets about 75% of that. So that 300,000 reduction for Chatham leads to 75% of that being increased for Harwich. Shall I carry on?
Yeah, while you're doing that, I'm just going to do a sound check in the Zoom room. Can everyone hear clearly? Let me put my glasses on so I can see.
Yep.
All right, we're good.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Thank you.
All right, good. So, and also, so that minimum local contribution going down has a knock-on effect on Harwich, and also Harwich's share of the district enrolment has gone up. So when we do, the assessment is based on, the 3-year average of foundation enrolment, and Harwich's percentage has gone up, and that also increases their assessment. So as you know, we have been in discussions about amending the regional agreement to change the assessment method, to change the impact on each town. But we're really early on in that process, and there's a number of steps that have to be met before we can approve a budget based on that, or approve assessments based on that methodology. We've got to get the method has to be approved. It has to be approved by town meetings and by the state before we can then vote on it at another town meeting. And this is a difficult process. It involves a lot of bodies, so there's some question mark over how far we're going to get with that process before the end of the year. And we definitely need to start the year with a budget based on the old assessment, or the current assessment methodology. So, recognising that significant increase in FY22 assessment for Harwich and the difficulty in changing the assessment methodology, we've identified 2 ways to reduce FY22 assessments. So these are the 2 we're recommending. One is to reduce the budget by $108,411, which is a very specific number, and that is because we would use school choice funds to offset the budget. Now, we already use school choice funds to offset the budget, and the previous versions of the budget included $1,359,000 worth of school choice funds. The current balance of the school choice fund is in a good, healthy position, partly because of a underspend last year, and so we're ahead of where we were this year. We're ahead of where we were last year, and so we think it would be feasible to increase the funding from school choice by $108,000, which would take it to a little over $149,000, so $167,411. So the other way we would do that, the other way we would reduce the assessments, is by increasing the revenue from excess and deficiency by $300,000. So at the moment, or in the draft budget that you previously approved, the excess and deficiency was set at $500,000. That's a reduction of $350,440 from the FY21 assessments. E&D has been certified at $2.1 million, a little over the 5% maximum. And so we believe it would be reasonable to increase our excess and deficiency by $300,000 to help reduce the assessments. Does it make sense so far?
Yep, perfect sense. Anybody have questions while we're pausing for the next slide?
So I've presented the budget here, broken down by the cost centres. The only difference from what you've previously seen is that instructional salaries are reduced by that $108,411. But remember, that doesn't mean we're reducing positions or programs, because that funding is being picked up by school choice. So the first part is you lower the budget a little bit, and then before you get to the assessments, you fund more of the budget from excess and deficiency, so that by the time you're coming to assessments, the pie is a little bit smaller. So everything would be the same. This is this slide that you've seen before. The only difference here is excess and deficiency. Previously, it was $500,000 with a change of $350,440, and now we're putting in at $800,000. So combined, that's a reduction of $400,000, and because of the way the foundation enrollment is at the moment, about a quarter of that comes off of Chatham's assessment, and 3/4 comes off of Harwich's assessment. So the revised assessment, you start with your local minimum contribution. That has not changed, but the amount, the operating assessment beyond minimum contribution has been reduced. Now it's almost 11.8 million for Harwich, almost 4 million for Chatham, and that's an increase of $597,000 for Harwich, which is still a significant amount of money, but in the previous version it was like $900,000, so it's a step in the right direction. And I wonder if I can move. The rather critical part of the slide is under. This is the last. So let's see. I'll get it back in a second. Oh, I know what I can do. Here we go. Sorry about this. Let's see. Just going to move them.
Yep.
There we go. All right, so there we go. Back down to the bottom. Sorry, that's not.
Yep.
Gosh darn it.
For those of you
Ah, there we
watching
go.
at home, we're just trying to move our Zoom screen so we
Yeah,
can see
I'm
the
gonna move them up.
numbers.
I'm gonna move them. Don't worry.
Oh,
Sorry. There we go. You can,
yay, there they go.
you
Okay,
can
good.
look down upon us.
That looks-
High.
There we
Okay.
go. Perfect.
So the net effect of these two changes is to reduce the increase for Harwich. So it would now be an increase of $541,000, which is just over 2% increase. And Chatham's now would be down by their change from FY21 would be a reduction of $374,000, 4.2% reduction. So, any questions? That's my
Any
slides finished.
questions or
Thoughts, comments?
comments? Let me put my glasses on so I can see in the Zoom room. Anybody have any questions? Because we do have to take a vote on this evening. So anybody have questions or comments? Joe, go ahead.
Thank you. So some of this information came out today. I've been out of town, hadn't been able to see it previously, but it seems fair to say that the admin team in this budget has gone to some extent, to the extent possible, to meeting the needs of voters in Harwich and meeting or at least to some degree, meeting the demands of the Harwich Board of Selectmen. It seems that we've done that, and I think it's commendable. I'm going to just make one side point that hasn't come up in public to our committee, but I hear it time and again. It's and I'm sure many of you have, it's the everybody knows, the argument that begins, everybody knows. Everybody knows that the Monomoy budget is full of unnecessary items, is full of fat, and then when the budget hits the table, what you need to do is take your pencils and sharpen them up, go through the budget items carefully and start crossing things out. And everybody knows the save that we see here, or the reduced increases, for Harwich and Chatham that we see here did not come from going through the items in the budget and saying, you know, we really don't need the diamond and gold Mont Blanc pens that the superintendent has purchased for the admin team. So we can cut that out. The gold toilet seats can probably go. I mean, that is not what has happened. And I would just love to go through a budget cycle where I'm not hearing this kind of false wisdom that the budget is full of unnecessary items. This is to comment, to repeat what the select board in Chatham said. This is a very tight budget. And frankly, I'm going to take a deep breath and vote for it because to some extent it's disappointing. If we were less constrained by reality, this isn't the budget we'd come up with. If we had the opportunity to sit in a room together, school committee, my colleagues, perhaps people from the community, the admin team, and we said, let's put together a budget that is striving for excellence. We would have more. It would cost more, but we would have more. A good place to start is the list of unfunded items that were attached as an amendment, attached to the previous budget. I'm sure you've all seen that. And we could come up with other things. I think there's some creativity in this committee that would help us come up with ideas that would further the agenda of education. A budget is always a compromise. I realize that more and more every year. This compromise, this is the smallest increase, and we're going to be applauded for that. I'm going to vote for it, but somewhere, at least somewhere in the back of our minds, can we keep in mind that a small increase is also to some extent at least, a small loss for educational opportunity for our students? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Anybody else? Terry, go ahead.
Thanks, Tina. And Michael, thank you. I think it's clear to me. And I agree with Joseph's observations. However, our reality is we're in a very, very challenging year. And I'm fortunate when I look at, for example, our resources to respond to the challenge. I think every year schools have a wish and a need once it stays settled, and they're fortunate sometimes to add one or two things to a budget. So we're not alone out there saying, look at this list of 650,000 things would make us that much better. I think all communities, especially in this particular year and the year coming. However, we could be a great deal more difficult position not having any resources such as school choice or, in our case, our excess and deficiency. There have been years when we are sensitive to that, and past years it would be lower and we wouldn't be able to respond like this. Fortunately, the assessment towards Harwich a month ago when we were talking was somewhere about a 1.6% increase with almost a zero operating budget, and you can't get much lower than that. That was $847,000 and change that Harwich would be looking at to add. The adjustment made by the leadership team at the next page gets that number to Harwich with an assessment of a little bit over 2%. I commend that effort, and at the same time, we're not tapping anything within our K through 12 program curriculum-wise or staff-wise. And under the circumstances, as each evening when we watch the national news, what's happening, I think we're in pretty good shape, and I commend our ability to respond and our willingness to both towns. So I much like Joe, I'm in favor of the revised assessment where the sum of money would be coming out of the ND. Thanks, Tina.
Thank you, Terry. Anybody else? Sharon, go ahead.
I'd like to make the motion that, with the understanding that there'll be no services cut to children, and that only the positions that had to do with reduction in students, as we've already talked about, that we approve the budget as stated.
All right, thank you, Sharon. May I have a second?
I would second that.
All right, so Terry has seconded. Any discussion on that motion? Yes, Nancy?
We have to vote the budget by cost center.
Ah, thank you. So we have to vote the budget by cost center. Oh, sorry.
Can I just make a request that Sharon put that in writing and email it to me, just so I have it? I don't.
For the minutes?
Yes, please.
So Sharon, Leo is asking the motion that you just made, if you'll write it down and send it to her, because she does need to record it for the minutes. And we do have to,
Okay.
yeah.
And then Nancy can call out the cost centers maybe, because I don't have them here.
I'm going to present, shall I present it?
Yes, why don't we do that? And thank you, Nancy, for guiding me through this.
Not with that. You need to vote on that motion first.
Oh, yes, thank you. Point of order. So we do need to vote on the motion that's on the floor because it was made and seconded. Any discussion on that motion? All right, so I guess we'll go to the Zoom room, and we're having to vote on the motion that was made with the yeah.
Sorry.
Oh,
What do you want me to, do you want to do this first?
Yeah.
Oh, you have one there.
So we're voting for the motion that was made, and we're going to the Zoom room, starting with Joe.
Osceola, aye.
Thank you. Sharon?
Aye.
Thank you. Joanne? All right, hold on. Let me get, I'm seeing, hold on, let me put my glasses on.
Aye.
Aye. So this is, but we have to have it by cost center. So do we want to pause this for a sec? Let me just,
I'm just wondering if the motion could be repeated for one, because I kind of got confused.
okay. So Sharon, can you repeat your motion? I know you were writing it down.
Can she type it in the comment box?
No.
We can't?
Yeah.
I just don't know that we should be voting on a motion that then,
Your mic's off.
oh, sorry. Sorry. Madam Chair?
Yes, Jackie?
My only concern is that we're voting on a motion that we're not quite sure what it is, because, and then she's gonna send it to Leah, but if it doesn't say what she said, then we're gonna have a bigger issue. Maybe she could simplify her motion,
Or withdraw it,
Or withdraw?
unless there's another suggestion?
So,
My motion's very simple. It's with the
not.
with the understanding that there'll be no programs cut for children, and that only the staff that's being cut that we've been talking about as due to reduction in force, that we vote the budget as stated. And then the specifics of the cost center can be added to that.
okay, so it sounds like you have a condition that you just, and my understanding is not, what you're stating is not being cut. Am I correct? What she's saying?
The budget as is not cutting, I mean, so we've had the position changes. So remember the slide had the different colored tables. We have some positions that are not being filled, some new ones, and some positions that are being reduced, but the net effect is like minimal. So there's definitely changes, which we presented in the public hearing and at previous meetings.
All
But
right.
there's not, I mean, it is true, there's no reductions to services to students, so.
Superintendent, go ahead.
It just, the budget as presented was was a level services, all the programs that existed before COVID were going to be there. That's, that is the budget as presented.
Right.
Yeah.
So Sharon, nothing is, as I'm hearing in this room, and I guess you can hear as well, nothing is being changed. So would you feel comfortable revising your motion based on what we're hearing here? Or maybe can you give us a little bit more of an understanding behind your motion, perhaps?
I want to, we have been hearing this in fairly good detail of what the budget consists of and what the plan is to remove that made sense because we didn't have the students with no changes to services for children. And I think, I'm really speaking for myself, but my guess is that everyone agrees with that. And so I don't want to just say I approve a bottom number because I don't approve a bottom number. So if we can say, with no changes in services to children or cuts that we haven't heard of, I mean, I think we need to say it the way it is. I don't see any problem with that. And then if something comes up later about the budget, that it comes back and we move it from that. This is our responsibility as school committee. One of the two there's policy and budget.
Okay. Is that helping anybody or Leo? I'm sorry, go ahead.
So, I don't want to overcomplicate, but if we were to capture Sharon's motion as with the understanding that there are no changes in services, the children programming, or further staff cuts, she moves to approve the FY22 budget as presented this evening, and then we could then go in and approve per cost center. Is that what I'm hearing?
Sharon, can you go ahead?
I could not hear Leah.
Yeah,
I've heard
I think we
everything
need
else.
you to read that into a mic, yeah.
Pardon me, I'm sorry. Sharon, just so I capture what you're trying to convey here, and I don't want to overcomplicate, if we were to capture your motion, sort of two-part, if you will, that you
Yes.
would make the motion that with the understanding that there would be no changes or in services to children programming or further staff cuts, that you would move to approve the FY22 budget as presented this evening, then
Yes.
we could then go in and approve per cost center.
Yes,
That's what
that's
you're
fine.
saying. Okay.
That's fine.
Okay, Jackie, go ahead.
For me. My only question on that is I feel like it locks in the admin to no changes when I feel like we should be just trusting our admin, that we've had multiple discussions and that Michael has just stated that the budget as presented is a level budget. So by articulating more in the motion, I feel like it muddies the water, for lack of a better term. I don't disagree with what Sharon is saying, but I feel like that's what this budget is presenting, and I don't want to get the motion too confusing where it locks anybody in to not being able to make any changes.
Okay, thank you.
Would-
Terry?
Recognizing Sharon's thought, but I agree with you, Jackie. I think it can be stated after months of discussion regarding what is not going to be removed, that we just state that we approve the level-funded budget that's been presented on Thursday, March, whatever it is. And then the breakdown would be the various capital categories would be listed.
Level service, not level funded.
Level serviced versus level funded, just for clarification.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. I see Meredith, so Meredith and then Sharon.
And I just echo kind of what Terry and Jackie said, because I feel like we've had multiple conversations with graphs that are color-coded about what was, what positions did have to change due to enrollment and shifting of jobs. I mean, we did have those conversations multiple times, which is included in this budget. So again, like, I agree with what Sharon's saying, but I don't know that we have to have a
motion?
separate motion.
So Sharon and then Nancy, I saw your hand go up. Sharon?
So I won't vote for it that way because I want this written in the minutes just as stated this way. So what I hear everyone saying is they agree with me, but they don't want to state it this way. And we're approving exactly what the administration said. How is that not trusting the administration? I just don't want any surprises. That's all I'm documenting. And if there's something, then it would come back and we'd probably approve it again.
All right, thank you. Nancy?
Yes, I want to echo what Terry and Meredith and Jackie said. And I feel like what we are approving with the cost centers and the financial is exactly what was presented in the package. So I will be voting no on this motion for that reason.
All right. So we have the motion on the floor with a second, because Terry, I think you seconded. Is that correct?
I did, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the motion is on the floor which we do have to vote on unless there's a removal of the motion. But Sharon, yeah.
I'm not removing it.
Okay, so Sharon's going to stick with the second. Terry, you're sticking with yours? Second? Your second, her motion?
Well, I agree with our conversation just finished. And the spirit is agreeable, including what Sharon's saying, but if it will help simplify the motion, I would withdraw my second.
All right, so we have a removal of the second. So Sharon, your motion is now sitting without a second. So does somebody else want to second Sharon's motion?
So I guess we'll have everyone voting for it without stating this. In my mind, this is abdicating our responsibility by saying we're not, if there was something written on a paper that we put into the motion that stated what I was saying, some kind of thing, that's fine. But just
Madam
to
Chair,
say,
point
okay,
of
there's a
order.
number, we're just saying the number, that does not feel responsible to me.
Okay.
You were
thank
looking
Point
for
of
a
order. Nancy, go ahead.
You were looking for a second, not a
Yes.
commentary.
Oh, okay, thank you. All right, so do we have a second? All right, so Sharon, we don't have a second, but this is being recorded in the minutes, correct? So your statement is in the minutes. It will be a part of the documentation.
Okay.
All right. So now we're going to go back to the FY22 budget, and I will need a motion to approve, please.
Madam Chair,
Nancy.
I move to approve the FY22 budget by cost center in the 1000s district and leadership, $1,190,874. 2000s instruction, $20,666,079. 4000s operations and maintenance, $3,314,529. 3000s other school services for $2,964,292. 9000s programs with other school districts and transfers out, $3,480,128. 5000s fixed charges, $7,646,794. 7000s capital, $363,813. 8000s debt retirement and service, $1,934,625, for a grand total FY22 budget of $41,561,134.
Thank you. Could I have a second, please?
Second.
And Jackie is seconded. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, we're going to vote on the motion that Nancy has made and Jackie has seconded. We'll start in the Zoom room. Joe, we'll start with you.
Osceola, aye.
Thank you. Joanne?
Joanne Sheehan, aye.
Thank you. Sharon?
No.
Okay, thank you. Jackie?
Aye.
Thank you. Meredith?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Terry?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. So that will pass with one no.
Excellent. Sorry, we also need a vote on the assessments.
I thought so.
I should have been clearer. My
Okay,
apologies.
that's all right. So we now are voting on the assessments to the two towns. Could I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair,
Thank you, Nancy.
I move that we approve the FY '22 assessment for the town of Harwich of $27,361,048.43. The town of Chatham assessment as $8,524,696.57, for a grand total FY '22 assessment to the towns of $35,885,745.
Okay, thank you. May I have a second?
Second?
All right, Jackie has seconded. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, we're going to move to vote on the assessment motion made by Nancy, seconded by Jackie. We'll start in the Zoom room. Joe?
Osceola, aye.
Thank you, Joanne.
Joanne Sheehan, aye.
Thank you, Nancy. Sharon?
Abstain?
Okay, abstain. Jackie?
Aye.
Meredith?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Terry?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. All right, so that passes with one abstention.
Fantastic, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, everybody. I'll see you again in the
Thank you for
winter.
that road graph. I really like
You
that.
like it? I love
I
it.
do like the
I
visual.
had it in the FinCom meeting, the finance. And I thought, I gotta,
Take notes, Mark, take notes.
Thank you very much. All right, moving to the next item under reports and discussions, the community forum to discuss our elementary schools, which was held last week, debrief and next steps. So I'd like to open it up for discussion about last week, your thoughts on it, and then your thoughts about next steps. So the floor is open. Jackie, go ahead.
I really enjoyed the forum. I'm really happy that we conducted that. I did, in my mind, feel like it was intended for a lot of the Chatham Town taxpayers, et cetera, but I did hear a lot of comments also that folks had wished that more Harwich people had attended. And the more I thought about that, the more I understood that, because it is an all-encompassing situation that we're in. I think that everyone had really great positive feedback. I think that lots of great questions were asked and answered by the superintendent, and I think it was a great first step. But it did also appear to me that we have a lot of work ahead of us. I know that one of the members, Brett Tolley, they'd done the survey, so I think it'll be interesting to dive into that and our own information and see what our next steps are going to be. But I appreciated everyone's participation.
Thank you, Jackie. Anybody else? Sharon, go ahead.
I agree with everything that Jackie said. I thought it was really nice to hear from all the different people, even Gretchen from the Rocky Unicorn. And I especially enjoyed that so many of the people I recognized from having grown up in Chatham, and now their parents talking about their kids and their fond memories. And I thought they had a good point asking about the how deficit is it to have small classrooms. I think that's a very valid question. I have thoughts on it myself. But I also did appreciate you, Jackie, stating something that never really got fleshed out, because I guess we were mostly listeners, about the equitable class sizes. So that concept was not what parents know about, that they're concerned about their children. It wouldn't occur probably to almost anyone about what if a teacher was teaching 5 kids in Chatham for first grade, and then in Harwich they were having to teach 19, how those teachers might feel. And I was disappointed that there weren't people from Harwich there. I understand it was in Chatham and mostly to hear about Chatham. At some point, we'll have to have people hear from each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. I'm going to, before I call on Terry, I just want to have a clarification. There were people from Harwich at the forum. They just chose not to speak. So I just want to clarify. Terry? Did you?
Thanks, Tina. I agree with what everyone has said so far. I too was concerned that, and I kept notes and tried to keep track of what was said by all of the Chatham folks. And there was a regular theme, and I just wondered that as I listened, it's clear we need to attach ourselves to the ability to get Howard's folks either online or meetings as they begin to understand what the issue is, because in my limited way, if we're going to resolve the small school class over in Chatham, it's going to come from the Howard elementary children, which number is 500 or 570, whatever the number is. What that solution is, which we really didn't get into, you have a base of youngsters that are Chatham and school choice youngsters in Chatham now, and they equal X number of children. Those seats need to be filled. My opinion, they're not going to be filled with school choice, and they're not going to be filled with cohort survival new births coming into Chatham in the near future, I say 5 to 10 years. As a result, they're going to come from our town. So the solution is going to have to be worked out that somehow we come up with that in the next year. So it's very necessary to get the Howard mums and dads sitting and understanding at a level that is raised, and then how we go about doing it. I also think, agreeing with Jackie, that to a minimum, I think we need to plan out at least a couple more public forums. One could be in the spring after we settle somewhat our budget issues, and the other in the early fall after we settle other things. Then that info, and that also would be my prime, going back, repeating myself, that the mums and dads of, to begin with, the 500 plus children in Howard need to be contacted to say, join us on Zoom or join us in a public meeting when things get healthier, so we can share with them what some of the plans might be and get them to say, do you have any other ideas? So I think one up and a couple more or so to do, to go, I think would benefit all of us.
Okay, thank you. Meredith, and then Jackie.
So I thought it was a great, first conversation. Like you said, Tina, there were Harwich parents there. They just didn't choose to speak. A couple things that I think that could be helpful is, helping everyone to understand the difference between, I think there was some confusion between small class size and low number of classrooms. I think there was a confusion between those two things that I feel could be easily clarified. And just, even though it is about the elementary schools, it affects the whole district. So even though we heard from a lot of elementary school parents from Chatham, I think that this situation is affecting all of the families in the district and the district as a whole. So I don't know how to, I guess we just continue to talk about it to help families understand that. But those are my two kind of takeaways, that it's not just, it is about the elementary schools, but it's beyond that as well. And then that class size, number of classes.
Okay, thank you. Jackie?
After listening to everyone, I reflected back on what I said, and I did not mean that they were not, the Harwich were not there. I just didn't hear from anyone. They were there, they were participating, I just didn't hear anyone speak for Harwich. And that being said, I do feel like as a committee, we made it a priority to really, for lack of a better word, target the Chatham community, to really start at that point. How does Chatham feel about their school, even though it's the district? How do they feel about that piece in their community and how it's going to impact them? From that, we learned a lot. There's a lot of misinformation, class sizes versus class sections, equitable class sizes. There's a lot that we need to educate our community members about. And also, I think when I was talking about equitable class sizes, I was also trying to give some perspective to the community in general, that our classrooms are small. Our class sections are on the lower side And we're fortunate for that. So I don't see that changing. What we're looking at is the deficit in education for kids in a classroom with very few kids. And I think what Mary's saying is how that affects those children moving forward through the district from years out, how that impacts the teachers and how they plan the curriculum and work as a district. There's lots of moving pieces. I think it will definitely be important for our next meeting to encompass and purposefully encompass Harwich families, taxpayers, and Chatham, and we'd have to advertise that in that way. I don't necessarily know that Harwich is thinking about how this is going to impact them yet, because we haven't come up with what we're doing. But if they were to understand, gee, if we kept Chatham Elementary because everyone's really for it in Chatham, that means all of you in East Harwich, potentially, whatever, we're gonna redistrict. That means your child now goes to Chatham. That's how it will impact you. Or that means we're gonna just take some of the kids and we're gonna put all the second and first graders over here, like, I don't think they're looking at it, how they're gonna impact them. So that's why I think they weren't quite sure where they were in that conversation. So once we have a better grasp on, through the surveys that they've taken, what our options are going to be, then I think you're going to start hearing from a lot more Harwich folks as a district, as a community, and as taxpayers on how they feel about the impact of an elementary school or no elementary school, and kind of look at it differently. And I think that's our job to kind of guide them through that and kind of make that plan as that liaison.
Thank you. Terry?
Just following up something Sharon said, and it was my sense of the 20 or so people who shared with it, and it's either a misunderstanding or not seeing the other side. I wasn't able to target it, but I don't think there's an argument at all about, at some level, small classes are good. No one argued they're not. And we're not even saying, and there's what you said, Jackie, on the Zoom and here, that we're very lucky in this region, both towns, to have, by and large, very small classes. And not thinking about what it was 30 years ago, but very small classes in all levels. It struck me, and this goes back when this started conversing with the Chatham Select Board, maybe 3 years ago. It had nothing to do with money per child. The question came up at a meeting that I happened to attend, and at the time, and it echoed a little bit the other night, last week, where some parents were saying, gee, I love small classes. I lived it. I happened to be here and I went through. I was one of those small class kids. And so it's all great. So who would have a problem with that? Well, we got to keep reminding, and I think Sharon mentioned it, I'll finish with what my answer would be, that regardless of how we do it, the numbers of K-4, numbers of kids in the classroom at Harwich Elementary, give or take 1 or 2 youngsters, needs to mirror what we do in Chatham. Because with our region, you can't have one school with 6, I'm exaggerating, 6 or 7 kids in a class, because I happen to live in one town, for the 3rd grade teacher, take that for example, and over in Harwich, there's one with 17 youngsters. And if that got to be, rather than an outlier position, but a norm, you'd have a class grievance, you would have major issues around salaries of teachers teaching 7, 8, 9, 10 versus someone. So that's a given, that whatever we end up looking into and resolving, moving youngsters, for example, possibly in East Harwich, you'd have to do it in numbers that's sort of even Steven. And that was not broached the other night, but and maybe people understand that, and I just didn't pick it up. The other point I raised also, someone said during that meeting that in comparison with the Nauset region, where there's a disconnect that agreed with the communities, that the elementary schools making up part of that Nauset, they committed to pay for their own elementary schools. And someone made the comment, well, we're really last on that list. Chatham is still, it's low compared to, well, yes. But it's a different situation that's going on that we're looking into. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Nancy?
Yeah, I agree with what's been said. I think it was a good first step. I always enjoy having a forum where people can pretty much ask and say whatever they have on their mind and what is in their heart, because I think it's very valuable to hear. We heard overwhelmingly people saying they want to keep Chatham Elementary as it is. They don't want a change from the parents that are there now. And I also agree with what Meredith said, and I think it's a very valuable point to say that Chatham Elementary is Chatham Elementary, and so that decision will permeate throughout the district. So I think that's important to make sure that we involve everybody. I would like to see more public forum on it so that people have that freedom to speak and ask questions without a binding agenda. I was a little disappointed in the coverage in the newspapers about it, because they made it sound like it was a lot more financial than I felt it was. I didn't feel like there was that financial piece, but I think that's also a part of it. I didn't feel that the finances dominated that conversation, so I was a little disappointed to see that. And I'd like to, I want to move beyond the finances, because I feel like we're always bound to finance, or always bound to the numbers. And at this particular stage, with this particular conversation, we're truly trying to find the educational piece. And, I remember back when we made our goals, Dr. Carpenter made a point of separating them out. One of them is a finance and one of them's not. And yes, they're all intertwined, and yes, they're all going to impact each other. But in this specific situation, I'd really like to focus on the education at the elementary level between both towns. And then in terms of next steps, other than holding additional parent forums or community forums, and specifically reaching out to hear from the Harwich families, because I do know that there were Harwich families on there, but hearing their opinions, I think that's important. I also feel like simultaneously, in addition to holding another community forum, we really need to move this thing forward somehow by getting a group together that can start doing the exploration instead of it just being us at these meetings, whether it be a subcommittee or whatever you want to call a working group or an ad hoc subcommittee. But I just, in my mind, and I was talking with somebody, a Chatham community member, in my mind, I almost look at it as something like the building subcommittee, where you have a committee working on something, they figure it out, they analyze, they research, they do their own work, and then they come to us with their recommendation. We take that recommendation and go with it however we go with it. We either agree with the recommendation, or we say, no, we don't like that, go back to the drawing board, kind of like with the high school building committee. They came to us with a recommendation, we had to approve everything as a committee. So I kind of look at it as, we really need to have a dedicated group of people who are going to work on it and to analyze what would be the best way, involving the principals at the elementary school, involving Mark, because he's feeling left out, involving other administrators and parents and community members, and getting everybody's input. But I think other than asking for opinions and asking for questions, I think we also need to push it forward. And maybe the ultimate decision is, you know what, we're going to leave as is. We're just going to let it be. And that could be the decision, whatever the decision is, but something has to be decided at some point. We can't just keep asking questions and asking people's opinion, in my thought.
Thank you. Yes, Superintendent, go ahead.
So just two things in reflecting back on the forum and, maybe voices that we didn't hear and how to elicit those voices. I think maybe for our next forum that we have a question to sort of structure the discussion that I think elicits the voices on both sides, something to the extent like, would Monomoy's elementary schools be stronger by moving some Harwich children to Chatham Elementary School? And I think, because it very distinctly, has the Harwich, you're potentially part of this solution. And at the same point, I think it allows, I think, some of the Chatham families, and I think we heard from some of them that, that are very content with the status quo and the way it's there. And I think that's what we have to hear is like, because there's going to be some dynamic tension between those that want the status quo and those that might want to see something different, but we can't figure out what the want and will is if we're only hearing from one set of voices. The other point that I just want to point out, there's one misconception that I think we heard more than any other misconception, and that's that the superintendent wants to close Chatham Elementary School, which the superintendent has never articulated or said, but that for whatever reason seemed to be whoever read my report walked away with that impression, which is not accurate.
Thank you. Anybody in the Zoom room? Joe, go ahead.
Helps to unmute. No progress towards reaching a solution was evident at the public forum. Despite a informative presentation by the administrators, Chatham public has not yet fully grasped the scope and depth of the issues. Based on discussion at the meeting, one could reasonably think that the question is simply whether or not we should have in Chatham an elementary school in a vibrant community. There's little understanding that the elementary school is going to cost Chatham taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars more than they're spending now. The town wants a school. Is the town willing to pay for it? There's no clear answer yet. A few who do understand that greater expense will be involved, and a few of those voices were raised at the meeting. The few who did understand showed no interest in taking the necessary steps towards increasing Chatham's financial obligations. There was also a third group that Dr. Carpenter alluded to. Chatham can now boast of its own conspiracy theorists who believe that all the major decisions have been made somewhere, somehow, and that all of the work that the administrative team does in public, going to speak to the Board of Selectmen in Harwich, the Select Board in Chatham, all the work that the school committee does in public and in its subcommittees and so forth, all that is simply a facade because the decisions have already been made somewhere and we're hiding the truth. That, of course, is simply nonsense, but we do have our own conspiracy theorists now. The forum did, though, reveal something that got me thinking of what John Saffier used to refer to as the process of dipsticking. You get a kind of sense of the room, you get a sense of comprehension and understanding. The forum revealed just how difficult it will be to bring Chatham voters into agreement with Harwich and the needs that Harwich has expressed. Certainly the Chatham Select Board is right to say that no immediate solution will be forthcoming from Chatham. There's just not sufficient support yet. The lack of sufficient support is what I heard at this meeting. And the Select Board is also right to want to continue the public discussion. I believe money is changing the nature of our district. And there's a lot more to be said about that, and we'll all be talking about that in the future. Nevertheless, our towns provide a better education for students when we work together. And our task should be to strengthen cooperation and unity. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Joe. Joanne?
I may be repeating what Meredith said. I'm not certain I heard it all. But my concern was, and then as always, I have to go dig in the weeds. My concern is, how do you collaborate? So that word just kept going through my head. When I heard, I like this school, it's fun. There's little kids, I loved it when I went to it. My little kids love it. And I think that's part of getting them to school, if they love what they're doing. But my concern was the difference between, and I've read now several studies that talk about small schools, small classes, big difference. And one of the particular studies I read was an Australian study. And it was just looking at the fact that, yes, you can have 3 small classes or 4 small classes in a school. And that allows you to mix, match, collaborate with teachers, have the children collaborate in their learning, which is what you do now. Didn't do it in the 80s, because I was teaching in the 80s and we just didn't collaborate. We did group projects, but we didn't collaborate. Teachers, that's what we do now. We collaborate. So it just kept coming to me as, we need somebody at our forums that, and certainly I would call on the principals. Sorry, Mary, but I would call on the principals. They've got the knowledge. And I think we need some knowledge base. We heard clearly that people love the school, and that's terrific. I also heard, I believe it was Mr. Westgate say, what's a community without a school? And I have to say that kind of hit me too. I had to really think about that. But I think now, before we continue on with how do I feel about it, it's what do I know about it is maybe where we need to go. That's my thought.
Okay, thank you. Sharon, go ahead.
I know about it because I taught it, and I taught it in Chatham. And what the Chatham parents are saying, I believe is very correct for preschool through grade 2. I think when I taught preschool, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, at least 2 years each. At least 3 years each. And I was the counselor there for a long time. Through second grade, the kids don't really notice. They do very, very well. I had 1 year of second grade of 13 kids, 1 year of second grade with 27 kids. I loved my class of 13 kids. It was fabulous. There was absolutely no disadvantage to that compared to 20. But then you get to third grade, and that gets very questionable. And by fourth grade, there's no more question about it. Those kids really do need other children. So that doesn't make a nice little fit. It's not exactly a research study, but it's a lived experience by me and by lots and lots of people at those grade levels. So I think that is some value, but that's, there are lots of factors here, and not only that. There is money, there's location, there's transportation, there's people's feelings on things. It's complicated.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. Jackie, go ahead.
I was just writing and because I gotta block it out in the way I think. And I go back to the original surveys that we did when we started talking about the class sizes, and we started talking about the future of Chatham Elementary. And I go right back to the survey we had, which was Chatham keeps an elementary school, we do an upper and lower, or we redistrict, right? Because those are really the three options we have. We all know that. And I think about Nancy and how we need to charge a group with what I think are those three things. We already have that work done. So I'm looking towards the next step. And one is I think we need to schedule our next community forum. And the second is that I think that we need to devise some kind of a plan of who would be the stakeholders in this committee. And I strongly agree that, much like Mark, when he presents a curriculum to us, he had this group that comes together and does the work, the people that know the information, all the moving pieces in it, and we need to get them together and honor what they come and bring to us as an option. When I quickly write them out and I just start thinking about like the pros and the cons, Chatham funding its own elementary school, you're not going to maintain your district-wide equitable class sizes. You're going to have too few children in the classroom. We've talked about that and that impact on education. We've talked about the impact of that curriculum cohesiveness throughout the district, the impact to those children moving through the district in the future, I think is far more negative than positive, possibly, but research it, find out. Similar to what we did when we changed the school times. People did lots of research on the benefits of the older kids starting school later versus the younger kids starting school earlier. Harwich strongly feels, and we already know, based on our survey results, they do not want to redistrict. And Chatham, of course, was like, absolutely, they favored that more. Why? Because they didn't want to lose the elementary school, because that's what they were thinking was going to happen, because that was one of our options. So I feel like it's kind of a false response from Chatham, because they were reacting to, well, this is my only choice. Of course I want Harwich to redistrict, right? We know that's not going to work. We see the numbers depleting constantly. We see that every year you're going to take an arm out and you're going to redistrict whatever, East Harwich or whatever, and all those families in that neighborhood are going to grow up and go to the middle school, go to the high school, and there's no young families moving here, Harwich or Chatham, for the most part. So what are we just going to keep digging into farther into Harwich? And then we're going to have the same problem. We're going to have schools that we're not filling or a school we're not filling. So that it leaves us with our third option, which is upper and lower elementary school systems, which right now, as I'm writing, at this moment makes the most sense, but again, charge this group with this option. I mean, this is also a time where we talk about Chatham's assessment. So maybe this is part of figuring out, well, Chatham feels strongly, as well as maybe many other people, that a school system in a town has very important values. And I think a lot of people spoke about that, and someone specifically spoke about a research or a study about that woman who was great,
Jeannie.
and she spoke about the effectiveness and all the ways that a school in a town affects it. Okay, well, we can still do that if we did an upper and a lower, but maybe this is where Chatham comes into play. We pay a little bit more in assessment to appease still having a school in the town. You're maintaining it. We got equitable class sizes. It's better for our teachers. It's better for our students, our curriculum, our structure. We can still maintain the district that way. So I just feel like we've got the work partly done. So now I would love to see when our next meeting is and how we're going to form this group and who those stakeholders are going to be, so that maybe at our next community forum, we can structure it with some of these answers we already have.
Thank you. And before I call in, I just want to make a couple of comments, and then Nancy and then Terry. So I wanted to say, because Joanne referenced Mr. Westgate, what's a community without a school? I think this goes to what Scott was saying, that there were several people that came in with the impression that Scott was trying, or not really Scott, but the district was trying to get rid of the school. So I think we fixed that, and we're trying to clear that up, that nobody's trying to take it away. I wanted to also follow up on a comment Nancy made about the article, because I agree with you, Nancy. I think there were maybe a couple of financial comments, maybe 2 or 3. I didn't think it dominated the conversation, so I was surprised by that as well. I do think the article did make a good point, or it did clear up that Scott isn't trying to take the elementary schools. I think that was in the article, I believe. I think that was cleared up. Going to what Nancy said, and then Jackie was talking about, the ad hoc committee was something I thought about in the beginning, And I would agree, because I think while we have 3 on the table right now, the redistricting, the upper lower, keeping Chatham as is, the the community representative, Jeannie, and I can't recall her last name, one of the things that stuck out to me that she said is she thought there were even more possibilities. So I would be very interested I would be very interested if we decided to put together an ad hoc group to have someone, perhaps like her, or somebody who's thinking beyond the 3 choices, because there might be other choices there, and I would agree. The other thing I wanted to say quickly that Jackie noted, what is the motivator for Harwich families at this point? I think if you talk to Harwich people without kids in the district, they're going to be all about that money piece. But when you talk to the Harwich families, of which I've talked to a few of them, and they're very happy, Principal Oldak. The Harwich families that I have reached out to in the elementary schools, they're really happy. So what was their reason to even show up and complain? Because they're really, really happy about, So I think, what is the motivator for the Harwich families to show up? So I think Scott makes a good point about, letting them know that we are thinking about options. We want to talk about options, and how do these options affect you, whether we go down the 3 that's on the table and perhaps some others. So, and the one thing I wanted to say, and then I'll call on Terry and then Nancy, it was pretty clear to me, and I think whoever closed out our forum said, if you ask all the families here, they're going to tell you we love the school. So that was pretty clear to me. That group loved their school in the same way that the Harwich families who didn't come and speak love their school, because nobody's taking anything away from them at this point. So they didn't have a need to speak up. And with that, I will turn it to Terry. Go ahead.
think, Nancy, did you go first?
No, go ahead. Thank you.
I don't, and I think you captured it, Jackie, and a lot of us have been in the business all our lives, and I can't, in my it's the mask. In my rethinking myself in my walks, I can't come up with a 5th and a 6th out-of-the-box fantastic thing that will satisfy everyone that we've just described. And in a sense, it's a pleasurable dilemma. And it reminds me metaphorically of a family who had an island home, beautiful home. And the eldest person passed away, and these 5 or 6 people inherited it. And this gift, this beautiful school in Chatham, they realize is too expensive for them to live in without some thinking. Because they just, and then in real life, you heard of this, many people have to, I'm out, I've got to sell, I can't afford to keep that treat only when Uncle Max invited us. And they're faced with, and what do we do? We need to somehow come up with, and there has been the beginnings of that. So one, I agree with the idea of a core group, mixed with some activists in the community and a couple of us and the principals. And see in the next, because we do have time, the next several months, if we can condense this into an idea that we would have to sell. And no one all, they won't all buy it, because I agree with what Tina said. All I've heard is very, very positive things about Harwich Elementary, and the same holds true with the Chatham Elementary. So we're getting into a problem that is sometimes will just fragment into other problems, but we're facing it, because what is right now can't continue year after year after year.
Okay, thank you. Nancy?
Thank you. I just wanted a voice that we didn't hear from that I really feel would be valuable, whether we reach out specifically, and yes, we heard from them in the survey, but teachers, the elementary school teachers, I think are somebody who we need to directly reach out to say, please attend the forum, please, whatever happens going forward. Because I think, we've talked about it here, we've talked about it wherever else we've talked about the elementary schools, the collaboration piece with teachers is huge. And that, while having a small, and what Meredith said is very true. I think that the misconception between having a class size of 13 in kindergarten versus having 2 classes of 13 in kindergarten, I think it's very important for a teacher to have collaboration, and also the fact that there is 2 groups of kids for peers. But I think that misconception, but I just want to make sure that we pointedly reach out to the teachers to either you say survey. I'm not sure if that's it right, but just something so that their voices are heard clearly as well by us and the communities.
Yes, I would agree. I would agree with you, because I think I have also been thinking about how, and I was trying to think, is it a joint, I mean, do we invite the teachers to the next forum? Do we have a separate forum? I don't want to keep putting meetings on everybody's plate, but the teachers are going to have a different conversation than the parents might. So I don't know if it benefits to combine all of them or to have something separate. So that's just a thought to think about. Terry?
As a suggestion, if you can find a way to pass the buck, but make it sound like you're not doing it. I wonder, in one of the regular monthly faculty meetings of the 2 elementary schools, that the principals create an agenda, and I'm sure they ask the staff before their meetings what other topics they want discussed. They could announce 2 months in advance a block of time where they'd like to sit down, for our purposes, with the principal and the superintendent, however, to discuss this for a half hour, or whatever minutes it would take staff without a big crowd around them in their own setting, to share what they see, and have Mary and Robin spend 5 minutes with the dilemma, describing what the problem is, and then open it up. So that's my suggestion.
Love that.
Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion. Even though I think the survey's a good one, the only thing the survey doesn't do is have that dialogue. Somebody can hear something somebody else says, and, you know, so that, I agree. So that's definitely a possibility, I think. Nancy?
And to go off of Terry's point, if that's a great idea, is that sometimes people get intimidated by speaking their mind in front of the parents. So I say some teachers could be possibly intimidated to speak their mind after hearing, you know, Chatham Elementary, they want to keep it just as is. Does a Chatham Elementary school teacher maybe want to do something different for a specific reason, but they don't want to say that? That they may not want to say it in front of those parents. So I agree with what Terry was saying. It might be better to do it in a private setting.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So next steps, I definitely would like to have a next step so that we can keep moving forward, because I think I also have heard consensus on a spring forum. So I don't want to lose sight of that, because spring technically is on March 21st, which is just next week, or whatever, a few more days. So for our next steps, and I've also heard ad hoc committee mentioned, so do we want to take a step? I don't really have a vote, but we can certainly do it by consensus. Do we want to at least have a couple of school committee members perhaps take this on and start putting together at least a list of stakeholders and parents, or maybe think about how to put the word out there to get people interested? I mean, I can do it as the chair, or we can have a couple of school committee members.
I was wondering about school council, Chatham Elementary's school council, that they might be a good source to facilitate this and coordinate between the 2 schools, and they probably have a grasp on community stakeholders, and or we can contribute to that as well. Even if they come up with what types of people in the community, members of the community they're looking for, and then we can all help resource that. But they might be a good group to kind of collaborate and start that, if it's appropriate.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And if I could ask, Principal Oldak, on your school council for Harwich, is your PTO president part of that school council?
Our PTO board is being re-voted at the next meeting, but currently the PTO treasurer is.
Okay. So you do
We have 16 members, and it consists of community members, parents, and staff.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so So next steps, I don't want to lose sight of this, next steps, so we can either, a couple of people, or perhaps the chair and the vice chair can take this on and get some things moving. Because I do think we want to at least put together some group of stakeholders. And another thought is, with the stakeholders, if they can do this research that I think Jackie was talking about, or putting something together, perhaps the next forum, they would lead, kind of like Scott did. They would lead with a presentation, and then we open it up based on that. But I would like the stakeholders to be Harwich and Chatham.
What you just said is exactly what I have in my mind.
Sure. Okay,
Is that, and I actually made notes about that. No, I could read my notes. I think that the next forum would be fantastic if somebody other than us, because even though it was the perception that Scott was trying to close Chatham Elementary School, his perception kind of bleeds into us, and so that we kind of come across as we're trying to close Chatham Elementary, or we're trying to do something. So it would be good, I think, to have a different group come in to say this is something we need to talk about.
Good. Terry?
A little twist on that, Nancy. The issue is so valuable and so potentially lacking any solutions. I would enlist Scott and Mark and Michael and the two principals. That's our brain trust. And they're committing every day from whatever time, and we're not. I might give it an hour during the week, but these are the folks that are our valued people. So whatever surrounding folks, a couple of parents from Chatham and Harwich, that to me would be the, without letting go of it too much, the core group that would design the next step, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Did you have your hand up? Oh. Anybody else have a comment on this in the Zoom room? Joanne or Joe or Sharon? Jackie?
I was just gonna say, maybe sometime this week, once you get a grasp on the calendar, we can maybe sort out a date for the next forum, or a concept of a date to start getting that on the calendar too, because I know schedules are tight, and I don't know if, it's selectmen or, gosh, no, whatever. So,
Yeah.
we don't have to do that tonight, but maybe in the following weeks.
Right, yeah. And we can certainly set dates via, in between.
Yep, perfect.
But yes, I absolutely think getting a date on the calendar is important. But tonight, I don't know if we want to maybe agree by consensus that at least a couple of us, or the chair and the vice chair, are moving ahead, or do you want to put this on the 25th agenda to revisit and have a conversation about? Nancy?
I'd like to say that you and Joanne would be a good way to get together to try to make a next step.
Yeah.
I like volunteering Joanne while she's not in the room.
Oh, okay.
No, Joanne's saying?
Joanne is saying no. Go ahead, Joanne.
No, I'm not volunteering. I'm raising my hand. I would like to define who the stakeholders are. I keep hearing that word, but I want to know who do you determine to be the stakeholders? Because I think that's an important piece.
Thank you. And before I take the hands that are up, I'll just answer that, and maybe somebody else. Joanne, I think what I was thinking of is that you and I reaching out, not that you and I are defining the stakeholders, but that we're reaching out to, say, the Chatham School Council, the Harwich School Council, the PTOs, reaching out to see who other people might put forward as the stakeholders. Okay.
I think you better define who stakeholders are before you start approaching different councils. I think it's important to know there are people in the community that don't belong to a PTA. They don't belong to, the Board of Selectmen, but they certainly are very knowledgeable, and they pay taxes.
Okay.
So I see them as stakeholders too.
I would agree. Thank you. I'm going to take Nancy, Jackie, and then Sharon. So Nancy, go ahead.
Woohoo. This is my thought, my proposal of sorts. You and Joanne get together, make a plan as to how you could go forward with it, finding stakeholders, or however you want to go about it. And then at our next meeting, tell us what your thoughts are, and in the meantime, set a date for a community forum so that we can we can introduce the concept to a community. So
Nope.
basically, you guys work in the backseat.
Okay, thank you. All right.
No, it's me.
So Jackie is next in the queue, and then Sharon, and then Joanne. I am coming back around, Joanne. Don't lose your thought. Go ahead, Jackie.
Well, what I was going to say is that my definition of a stakeholder involves all community members. So you need to have business owners in the community, merchants associations, Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce. I mean, there's lots of different people. So I'm not looking at just school-based stakeholders. People who own nursery schools or pre-Ks in the areas, retired taxpayers. There's numerous people, and I'm wondering if, I think it's maybe, Joanne's a little worried because it's too big instead of narrowing it down, and I think my hope was that there would be enough networking that we could feed you people who are interested in doing it, but I'm also wondering if there's something we could do that publicly, that we're looking to develop this task force, if you will, who would like to be involved, looking for volunteers, target some of those groups that we would like stakeholders from, because in our opinions, they would be valuable. And then maybe you'll get other people as well, which is the hope. So I'm wondering if Joanne might feel more comfortable with that.
Okay.
None.
Thank you. And Sharon, I know you're next in the queue. Hold on one second, only because Joanne has been referenced twice. Joanne, do you want to have a response? Go ahead.
No, I'm just going back to that stakeholders has to be defined by the school board, not by me, not by you.
Okay.
It has to be a whole group effort to define it.
Does she mean the actual
Again, you get back into Chamber of Commerce. There are people out there that don't belong to these boards that are equally invested and probably educationally, and I'm talking about school educationally, better sources to draw on.
Okay.
It's got to be a conglomeration. That's I'm trying to say. It's got to be a conglomeration. Step away from organized boards. They're already doing their thing. Let's try and see if we can't find people who care about this issue.
Okay, thank you, Joanne. Sharon, go ahead.
So I think I know Chatham pretty well, at least I did 10 years ago, and Harwich now. And I don't agree with Joanne. I think those other people are called taxpayers and voters. But I don't want to have a closed door either. But you do look at people that are representative. You do look at church groups, and if they have somebody that represents the kids in the church group, whoever does the church stuff for children, those are people that are very interested in trying to make this a decision more than just are we going to pay 10 more tax dollars in our tax bill. It's not that we want to exclude somebody, it's that there are people, if you have people from church groups, if you have two people from like a Lions Club or any of these large groups, it could be a couple of people from Chatham Harwich newcomers, then those groups feel that they're represented, and if somebody particularly wants to be the representative from that, that's fine. I did this with Scott when we did our strategic plan, where we had to have stakeholders. We can't have every single person there. But we could also have it open-ended where somebody could show up.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. I have a question, but Terry, go ahead, and then I'll have a couple of questions.
To put a point on this, we, for the last 25 minutes, have been attempting to do the job of this core group. So I would make the suggestion that if Joanne as vice chair and Tina and our leadership group could meet independent of us and brainstorm for a couple of hours, how would they expand that core group? And then they come back for the next school committee report out. That's all I think it's cleaner and shows trust. So-
Thank you. And Superintendent, before I call on you, I just have a quick question. Because Mark is sitting right behind me, when we did the equity task force, how did you put a call out to get your task force? So he's gonna come to the mic, hold on one second. Yay!
Mark Smith, CIA.
Mark Smith, Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment. So we did with Joy's help, did an all call to community. We put it out in the paper, and then we just had a link for sign up. In that particular case, we translated it into the sign up was just through a Google form, but we made copies in multiple languages and all the languages that are in the district. So yeah, we pushed it out on social media, pushed it out on our website, sent an email out to our families, and then went out to the community through the newspaper. And then did we send direct invitations to other community groups? I'm trying to remember. I think so as well. Similar like the way the strategic planning process in the past, where we pushed it out to all the different stakeholder groups in the two towns.
Okay, thank you. And then the superintendent and then Nancy. Oh, you have a question for Mark? Oh, hold on, Mark.
Oh, he's not going away anywhere fast. He's loving it. I just want to, can you remind us how representative your equity task force group is?
It is diverse in types of representation from across the towns. We're still working to diversify from cultural and ethnic background and language background. But so we have students, we have staff, we have people who are connected to the community in a wide range of, some people who work in municipal government in the town, some people who are just connected, who live and reside in the town, people who work for other community organizations. So we're pretty broad group from that perspective.
Thank you.
Thank you. Superintendent, go ahead.
I was going to provide a friendly suggestion to help at least Joanne get semi off the hook. I think that I think if the group is asking the chair and vice chair to come back with a recommendation, I think you've got the dream team with Principals Oldek and Millen, who I think could brainstorm with you. They have worked really hard over the last several years putting together very strong school councils that are representative, that have that broad stakeholder group. And I think they could work with you on what a stakeholder group that, that has elementary sort of interest and focus could look like.
Okay, thank you. Joanne, do you have a response to that?
I'm gonna say I really didn't hear a lot of it, but I'm pulling my name out and putting Terry's name in, seeing as where he's giving out jobs. I think I'll share it with him.
Okay. Thank you. Well, all right. So,
And next item.
So we're back to, because
so
I agree. Oh, Nancy, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, to simplify, maybe you can meet with Mary and Robin.
I could do that.
So
I
we'll
could do
pull
that.
Joanne's name out, and just that way you guys can come up with.
She is scared of stakeholders.
So what I think Joanne's suggestion though is a good one in the sense of defining stakeholders, because I do believe I'm hearing that we do need to get clarity, because some of us may view it one way and maybe others. So what I will do, then I will take on the
define it for you.
task, because I heard a couple of things here. We'll start working on a date, because we do need to get a date on the calendar. So I'll get that and we'll start landing there. And I can reach out to Robin and Mary, and we can start maybe putting together, or I can somehow defining stakeholders. And then the other question I have for everybody, because I also heard this come up, do we want to have some movement on the teacher forum? Do you want me to also put that into my to-do list? And if I'm talking to Robin and Mary, perhaps we could also talk about that too. Does that sound good?
Yep.
Okay, so so this will be on the March 25th agenda, and I'll report back on those items. So I'll be speaking with both principals around the stakeholder definition, getting their feedback on that. also the teacher forum, and perhaps their ideas on how we would go about that, and then picking a date. Does that sound good? All right. Thank you, everybody. Any final, I think, anybody else have their hands up? And all right, so that will be how we'll move on with that. The next item on reports and discussions is a request to consult with school attorney to respond to MREA grievance. Everybody received a copy of the grievance, and I am asking, if needed, we do have the hearing, a grievance hearing scheduled for March 25th in executive session, and I'm asking for your permission, if needed, that I can consult with our school attorney. Jackie.
I move to approve that our chair may consult with the school attorney to respond to the MREA grievance.
Second.
And a second by Nancy. Any discussion? Terry.
I agree with it, and I might have missed something, but I think the chair should automatically have that without even having it come before our committee.
I feel like we
Once
talked
a
about that
level
before.
2 or 3 grievance is received by the superintendent of schools, I think automatically it becomes the superintendent's need to address that with the chair, and then copy us, and then whatever continues on, I would make the assumption that if it's a judgment, that our school attorney is contacted. I don't,
Okay.
that's
Thank
my
you.
personal feelings about it.
Thank you, Terry. Jackie.
Terry, I'm laughing because I agree with you, but I think we have a policy
Yeah,
that we
have a
worked on this
policy.
year about that specifically.
We tried.
Maybe I said no at that too.
No, I don't know. No, I don't think that you said no. I'm not saying that. I'm laughing because it brings it up and I'm like, oh my gosh, this sounds so familiar. So
No, I recall that, but
I completely agree with you. It had potential votes, so I just kind of went with it, but we could look at the policy and see if actually, Tina, you even needed to do that. We need to, new policies, we're learning.
Yep, we're learning. Joe, go ahead.
We do have a policy, and Tina is following that policy correctly in this instance. The suggestion is a good one, that it shouldn't happen this way because our policy doesn't work for us as effectively as the policy should. The chair, upon receiving something like notice of a grievance from the Teachers Association, should be able to respond to that in a way that is most effective in preparing a response, whatever that might be. And for instance, if a chair, and I speak about a chair, not necessarily people who are in the position now, but if a chair feels that the day that notice comes in the inbox, that they want to seek some advice from council, the chair should be able to do so when that need arises. Policy prohibits the chair from acting this way. And I think that, we voted this, but it's not the best policy as we're seeing today. I would not like to have to wait a week or so to get some advice. I just think that aside from it being time lost, it's extremely, I would find it extremely aggravating. So I commend the patience. So this just says we should look once again at that policy for which because it's not really working out in a way that is best for us. Everything that Terry said, I think, is quite sensible, and that should be the direction of of the policy that we really should adopt. But I'm going to vote in favor of this. I think certainly the idea of consulting with the school attorney as part of the response is a very straightforward and a sensible thing to do, and we should do it ASAP.
Okay, thank you. Any other, Terry?
Just a quick reinforcement. Thank you, Joe. When this process begins with a level 1 at a building level, or it goes to the principal, or in this case, to the superintendent, and level 3 is school committee, you notice it ends at the school committee at an executive session. It's not a public session. That also reinforces my thought that as it begins with a level 2, it should stay as an executive. So that there's not this conversation or a vote publicly. There's no need for it. I think the chair has complete judgment with the superintendent to make certain the next level to agree with a grievance or deny one is an access to our attorney. So if it means reviewing our policy, I can't remember the details, let's do that, and that's why I wouldn't vote. I will abstain because I really think this is just an added burden for us to discuss in our public meetings.
Okay, thank you, Terry. Any other discussion before we do have a vote on the floor? All right, seeing no other discussion, so Jackie's made the motion, Nancy has seconded. We'll start in the Zoom room with an aye or nay, starting with Joe.
Osceola, aye.
Thank you. Joanne? And you'll have to come off mute, Joanne.
Aye.
Thank you. Sharon?
Aye.
Thank you. Jackie?
Aye.
Meredith?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Terry?
I've never done this, so I'm going to abstain. It's a kind of a freeing feeling.
All right.
Everyone knows why, I'm sure.
And I'm an aye. So that's 7 with 1 abstention. All right, thank you. And moving into subcommittee reports, which I don't believe we have any this evening. So we're going to move into superintendent's report. Superintendent.
All right, I'll try to be loud enough for Joanne to hear me. Joanne, just checking. You can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I would like to just recognize one of my favorite faces that I have seen around Monomoy for years, but Karen McPherson, who is a frequent volunteer, and she's annually participated in the Community Read Across America Week. She missed being able to come read to students this year, so she recorded herself reading 2 books and shared those videos with our elementary schools. And again, I just appreciate Karen's gumption to make things happen and find where there's a will, there's a way. So thank you, Karen, for that. In terms of my biweekly COVID update, this is what I refer to as the lesson of Mary Olbeck, that Principal Police has now realized that thou shalt not boast about COVID successes in your school, because when you do, at a meeting late yesterday, karma gets you. So at the moment, we have a issue with a COVID case that has impacted the high school football team, hence the football coach Larry Souza not being here, and then there's a trickle-down impact where I believe that Principal Police tomorrow needs 23 substitutes. So many of you are welcome to substitute tomorrow. But
Really?
yes, so COVID cannot end soon enough. We have had a couple positive cases this week, but again, things are trending in a better direction, despite how Principal Police is feeling today. We implemented a week ago Tuesday, we started pooled COVID testing. All of our pooled tests last week were negative. Superintendent Carpenter learned the lesson that never boast about all tests being negative, because this week we have a positive and have a group out awaiting results. We're hoping that tomorrow we can get some results and speak with local health officials and our district physician on how to interpret the results to kind of fine-tune when the middle school grouping that is currently quarantining will be back in. On the good news, the state has made vaccines available effective today to educators throughout Massachusetts. And, my hope is that as we go between now and April vacation, that we're seeing the bulk of our staff vaccinated, which I think will start putting us in a better place to address some of the quarantining that we have been doing, and can take a slightly different posture with how we're operating when it comes to quarantine. A lot of it is wanting to make sure that our staff and students are safe. But I think as we see more and more individuals get vaccinated and have that protection, I think we're going to be just in a better place. All in all, you've also seen a lot of stuff in the news about that the Commissioner of Education has ordered elementary schools and then subsequently the middle schools to come back to in-person learning. I just want to clarify for the committee, if you didn't also know this, the commissioner is still saying that families do have a distance learning option. So in short, what the commissioner is saying is that school districts need to be back functioning like Monomoy has since day one of this year. And it was funny. I was in yesterday in a middle school classroom in between classes, and two teachers were sort of joking. It's like, "Hey Scott, did you see on the news that middle schools need to come back in person?" As if we haven't been in person, all along. And it's really a testament to our staff. They've been doing a great job through this. We've been rolling with the punches. They've been very flexible on when we're sort of pivoting to distance learning, and I'm hopeful that we'll see less and less of a need to pivot. I mean, it's nice to see that the CAPES COVID rates are coming down, and I think with the vaccinations we're going to see more and more of that happening, and warm weather is going to help out. So we are tracking in the right direction, despite how Principal Felice feels this evening.
Thank you. Any questions, comments for the superintendent's report? All right, seeing none, we're going to move into action items. We've already taken care of the budget. The next item is the 2021-2022 school calendar. And you'll see first reading marked out because the first reading happened last time. There is one slight change, but we did mention this at the first reading last time, that there was a possibility that the professional development days might move around. And so there is a movement here. And Leah, I think it's been moved to the 8th, is that correct?
I did make a handwritten note where it says new date.
Yes. Yep, so there's a new date. So that's really the only adjustment, which we did note that last time. We agreed that was okay. There's no additional dates, it's just sometimes they might move around, and there was one change. So could I have a motion then, because we do have to vote on this one? Could I have a motion to approve the school calendar? Jackie?
Motion to approve the school calendar for the 2021-2022 school year as presented.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
All right, Nancy has seconded. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, we're going to take a vote, starting in the Zoom room. We'll start with Joanne this time.
Yay.
Thank you.
Joanne, sorry.
Thank you. Joe?
Osceola, aye.
Thank you. Sharon?
Aye.
Thank you. Jackie?
Aye.
Meredith?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Terry?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. So that is unanimous. And we've already done the next item. So we're moving to the declaration of surplus. Meredith, yes, thank you.
I'm going to try. I move to approve the items to surplus as presented in our packet this evening.
Second.
Wonderful. So Meredith has made the motion to accept the surplus as presented in the packet this evening. Nancy has seconded. Any discussion?
Now you can move to adjourn.
All right, seeing none, we're going to move to a vote. We'll start in the Zoom room. Joanne?
Aye.
Thank you. Joe?
Osceola, aye.
Thank you. Sharon?
Aye.
Jackie?
Aye.
Meredith?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Terry?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so that is unanimous. And the presentation of warrants has been made, and that moves us to the end of our agenda this evening. Could I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So
Meredith?
moved.
So it sounded like Jackie made the motion and Meredith seconded.
Second.
So we're going to go to the Zoom room. Motion to adjourn is either aye or nay. Joe?
Aye.
Thank you. Joanne?
Aye.
Thank you. Sharon?
Aye.
Great. Jackie?
Aye.
Meredith?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Terry?
Aye.
And I am an aye, and we are officially adjourned at 8:40 PM. Thank you all, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.